Ben Vallis here with First to the Floor. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Wayne Spooney and Jake Eisenberg are both here as usual, but to preview the Eastern Conference Finals, we're very happy to welcome in a recurring guest, a friend of the show from Barstool Sports, Dan Greenberg. Greenie, how's it going, man? Welcome back.
How we doing, guys? Here we are once again, Final Four. One more time.
Man. Here we go again, baby. What could go wrong?
Third time's the charm, right? Third in a row is the charm.
Has to be. At this point, I don't know what I'm going to do if it isn't. Let's just put it that way.
How are the stress levels, Greenie, at this point?
Well, I'm neurotic, so they're always through the roof this time of year. You know, I think it's been a weird adjustment for me to not have the Game 7 stress in the second and first round. I think, what was it? The first time that they haven't gone past 6 was 1986. So I wasn't even alive the last time a Celtics team has had this type of life in the postseason. But I mean, listen, it's nerves all tonight. It's nerves all tomorrow. It's nerves until they make the finals, and it's nerves until they raise the trophy. That's just the nature of the beast, I think. And maybe I'm deluded and deranged for that, but I don't know. I don't know how else to be.
No, this is why we love to have you on. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how people aren't, again, like before the Heat series, I was like, I don't know how people are being like, yeah, this is going to be easy. It's going to be great. And those people have basically been right so far. Is it like, this is easy, this team's amazing, the matchups are great, and they have been so far. It's just I can't unlive what I lived through the last 2 years.
Exactly.
And so
I'm not taking that bait either. I'm not
exactly.
giving respect to the Heat. I'm giving respect to the Cavs. The Pacers have been a top 6 net rating team for the last 30 games of the year. All this, they should be cakewalk. It's not a challenge. I've been down that road. I've taken that bait before. I'm not disrespecting the basketball gods when we're this close to a title.
Yes.
Well, look, Eastern Conference Finals, it's what we're here to preview. Celtics, Pacers, beginning tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Greenie, let's start here. Was this your eventual preferred matchup coming out of that Knicks-Pacers series?
I kind of leaned similar to how I viewed Orlando and Cleveland. I was someone that preferred Orlando for a couple reasons. One, I'm okay going up against an elite defense because I know to beat the Celtics 4 out of 7 times, you have to be able to score and you have to be able to make threes. So I just was under this impression that facing a healthy-ish Cavs, assuming Donovan Mitchell was healthy, they just provided more ways to beat you than the Magic offense who couldn't score 90 points. I look at this series the same way, right? Like the Knicks hurt all that stuff, but just factor them at their peak. A good defense who's going to struggle to score, who you probably don't trust to make 20 to 25 threes in a game. Whereas on the Pacers, you might be able to score at will on them like the Cavs defense, but they can put up 120 plus. They can have a game 7 like we just saw. I just think there's more ways that they can beat you offensively. And at the end of the day, the playoffs is about getting buckets. We saw it in the Minnesota-Denver series. It's who can avoid those 5-minute scoring droughts the most. I think the Pacers are better equipped to do that. And then you factor in the fact that Brunson now fractured his hand. I mean, the easy answer is the Knicks just because of their health. But from a basketball standpoint, I do think the Pacers provide a tougher cover, but an easier defense. So it's going to come down to shot making.
This Pacers offense is the best unit of any team we will have faced, right? Like, it's better than the Cavs defense. It's better than the Heat's defense, and neither of those teams could really score. So I think that's the thing that kind of scares me about the Pacers is, we could make 18 threes in a game and they could make 21. I mean, they have that type of shooting. Miles Turner's shooting 50% from 3 in the playoffs, which I was not aware of, which is on 6 attempts a game. So it's pretty nutty. They all of their dudes are shooting 40% from 3 other than Nesmith. But I think the healthy Brunson, healthy OG, that version of the Knicks scares me more than the Pacers just because the one thing I think you can do to this Celtics team is kind of rattle them and get in their head a little bit. Usually it's the refs that do that. Zach Zarba is the king of rattling Tatum. And the Knicks do that, and they just get all these bullshit offensive rebounds and stuff like that. The Pacers, man, they're just kind of soft. Like, I know they tried to play tough against the Knicks and did a really good job at matching the Knicks, but compared to that Knicks team with like Hartenstein and OG, and Brunson's a tough little dude, and DiVincenzo and Hart, like the Pacers just don't have that type of physicality, and I would rather play a team that I know we can score against. And if it's a track meet, there's the best team to win in a track meet is the Pacers, and second is probably the Celtics, and we have a much better defense.
I changed my mind a million times. I changed my mind a million times. Watch it, and like basically whatever happens, whoever wins, I'm like, damn it, I wish the other team would have won. That's kind of ends up what's happening. Like clearly the injuries with the Knicks, but my guiding philosophy with the Celtics, which I've said a million times, is like in order to beat them specifically when they've lost against the Warriors, when they've lost against the Heat, is when you screw up their offense and you turn them over. Like against Draymond and against Spo, that's when they've been at their worst in the playoffs, and the Pacers don't have that capability. So I like it from that perspective, and also like that's probably the team that's most likely to get Jason Tatum shot back on track, which if we can get that back on track going into the finals, that would make me feel really good.
It's interesting because the Pacers have, in their playoff run, have not faced a healthy defense like what the Celtics provide. But then on the flip side, the Celtics defense has not faced a healthy offense like what the Pacers have. So something is going to have to give. The difference, I think, is the Celtics are not one-dimensional. They're not only a great offense or only a great defense. They're the team that can have that elite defense, but then match the Pacers offensively. So I think that's where the edge lives. But we have no idea. I mean, it is true. The Celtics have benefited from not having the primary offensive engine for both of the teams that they just played through. It's also true that the Pacers have not had to deal with the best defenders on the opposing team. No OG, no Giannis. Like, there's so much unknown, and you can't even really look back to their regular season matchup because they've only had Siakam for one of those games. So it's like, it's two teams where you're only just evaluating off what you think in theory because we really don't have anything to base it off of.
Yeah, the Pacers, they do have, per cleaning the glass, the 15th ranked defense in this postseason, which is pretty not good. Whereas, like you said, Greenie, the Celtics have a great offense and a great defense. I think they've got the number 2 offense and the number 1 offense, again, per cleaning the glass in the postseason so far. How do you, Greenie, expect the Celtics to attack the Pacers just generally? Like, what advantages do you expect the Celtics to find in this matchup?
I think everyone's going to go right at Aaron Nesmith. I think you're going to see a lot of Tatum in the post. I think when I'm trying to think back to the times where the Pacers and Celtics had these competitive games, it never really felt like it was anything the Pacers did in the half court, right? It was all just transition, even running after makes, getting out, playing fast, and then letting Halliburton get into the paint. So I think if you can limit that defensively, you've won, 75% of the battle that way, just because we know to beat the Celtics, you have to limit them on the wing and at the point of attack. And there is nobody on this Pacers roster who you can say consistently is going to limit either Jay or either point guard at the point of attack. It's just not how they're built. So, I mean, if there's no Porzingis, I think you'll see a lot of similar style of, pick and pops, moving the ball, 5 outs. Turner's not exactly a back to the basket big the same way Horford isn't a back to the basket big. So I think if you can just limit turnovers, find your individual matchups, sort of like the Cleveland series where they targeted Garland, play the Jays out of the post and get into the paint, you should be fine.
Yeah, the Turner piece is interesting. And man, I watched a great video from Caitlin Cooper. She did an hour-long breakdown, like breaking everything down. He's far more intelligent than us as far as I'll speak for myself at least. Far more intelligent than me.
That's not hard.
When it comes to X the nose, and I was like, so she laid out a lot of the matchups with the Celtics, and Turner is going to be someone that I think is going to be really key in this series and how they attack him because he's not good in space. And can you get him in switches? Can you attack him? Like there was one game where the Celtics played the Pacers and Al was out, and so they actually went to Tatum at the 5, and I had completely forgotten about this game that they actually tried that. And we all know that like we've been begging for it in the last series.
That's the ace in the hole. That's for sure the ace in the hole.
Yeah, and it's like Because so you talked about the keeping Halliburton out of the paint. The pick and roll coverage with Horford. You just switch it. Just switch it. Do you put Jalen or Drew on Halliburton or whoever, and then Tatum on Turner. So if they try and run a Turner pick and roll, it's just like, well, now you've got Tatum on you now.
Right.
And
that's not the matchup. Yeah, you're not winning that matchup.
So yeah, that's I think the key is like trying to manage the Turner thing and because he's been when he's good for them, that's when they're at their best. Like he's firing away those threes. So if you switch on the pick and pops, he can't hit 6 threes. He's not really a roller. He's not really going to vertically space you. Like he's not going to hit you on the lobs. And then defensively, I think he's turned into a Pacers player. Like beforehand, he was like known as the league leading shot blocker and stuff like that. But now he's just part of like the offensive sieve. And so I think you got to exploit him on both ends.
Yeah,
I also wonder, Spoonie, I'm curious because I feel like we've talked about this before when we were thinking about the Knicks series. Do you feel like you can exploit the Pacers on the glass the same way the Knicks just did? Maybe we see a more conscious effort of attacking the glass. Like when Cleveland only had Mobley on the floor, you saw what an emphasis on offensive rebounding. I mean, the biggest thing of why people didn't want to trade for Miles Turner was that he couldn't rebound at 7 feet. So it's like, now can we be the ones that take advantage?
So I think the flip side of that is like the last thing you want to do is get into a track meet with the Pacers. So if you're committing guys to the offensive glass and you're not getting the rebounds, all of a sudden they're coming back at you on 4-on-3 or 3-on-2. And that's when you can let their offense really get dangerous. So I think I would go the opposite direction and just keep them in the half court as much as you possibly can. But that's probably one of those like in-game adjustments where it's like, we need to change the tone of this game. Like, let's attack the offensive glass because we've been by far the best team limiting transition opportunities in the playoffs. The highest percentage of our possessions are half-court defensive possessions. And even the worst half-court defense is better than an average transition defense because it's just so much more of an efficient play. But there's going to be games where it's like, wow, we're having trouble scoring. Like, Drew, go get us some offensive rebounds. Like, get down there, Tatum. Like, we want to see you guys go grab some of those. So I think it's going to be one of those, like, transition points where Joe's going to have to really have his finger on the pulse of the game. Because I do think there's a lot of reward you can gain there, but there's also some serious risk. But I mean, the Knicks that's just how they play. They know no other way to play. And they're just kind of maniacs getting back too. Like they did an okay job getting back. But I'm worried. Siakam in semi-transition is like a legitimate problem. He was crushing the Knicks and Orlando in semi-transition. So that's another thing is like, even if you kind of get back, you've got to turn around. Like you've got to guard your yard. Like it's going to be a cross match sometimes. Doesn't matter. Like locate Siakam and play defense. So I wonder if we start not going for offensive rebounds, see how that goes. And if we're kind of containing their offense and we're like, we can just overwhelm these dudes if we win the possession battle and our defense is playing this well, I do think we'll probably go to it then for sure.
Yeah, it's a double take at this stat, but the Pacers in the playoffs so far have allowed their opponents to rebound 30% of their own misses.
That's what I'm saying. They're like
absolutely nuts.
And the Celtics, for all of, even though it never feels this way, they are a more than capable rebounding team, even without Porzingis. Especially because the Jays, go up a level on the glass, once the postseason starts. But, I just think they're going to have the same approach where they're going to try to beat you on volume. And, I think it's going to force you to have to take threes. Just like you're not going to have the 26, 27 3-point type performances in this series, I don't think. So making sure if you're going to give up 30% of your offensive rebounds, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we can sort of strike the right balance there. And just getting back to how the Celtics will attack the Pacers, this is not a hot take, but I believe the Jays will cook in this series. I think it's against single coverage because, we've seen defenses struggle with sending two at either Jay, that they're both capable of making the right play out of a double team. Whether or not the Pacers do that or whether or not they try and stick with single coverage, which I think is folly for the Pacers. I just don't think they've got any real defenders who can stay in front of them with maybe the exception of Pascal Siakam, maybe Aaron Nesmith as well. But generally, it's advantage Celtics really against any opponent, but particularly the Pacers there. And then attacking Miles Turner's drop coverage as well, I think will open up a lot of potential opportunities for the Jays, whether it's the pull-up midi, which is more of a playoff shot for those two, or whether it's Al or Tatum or whoever the screen setter is popping beyond the three-point arc. I don't think whether it's because of poor screen navigation on part of the Pacers guards or Miles Turner just not coming up to the level of the screen, I think there's going to be a lot of solid pick and pop opportunities for the Celtics in this matchup as well. Before we get to the defensive side of things, I know we kind of like headed that way already anyway, but any other glaring... Yeah, let's just jump around. Let it flow. Any other sort of glaring advantages for the Celtics there?
I do think it's... You don't want to over-hunt would be my thing, because I think there's a lot of pressure points. And I think when the Celtics are at their best, it's just when the ball's moving. So it's like, obviously, I think attacking Tyrese Halliburton has to be like a priority, but you don't want to overdo it. Like, you don't want to like tank your offense to where you're spending, because you know the Pacers are going to be ready to be pre-switching, scram switching. They know this is coming. Like, do you spend 7 to 8 seconds trying to get Tyrese Halliburton into the action, and then all of a sudden you're down to below 10 seconds in the shot clock, and they're able to guard you in that one action that you end up trying? So I think it's like you have to try and wear him down. You know, he's had issues with back spasms and the hamstring thing. Like, he's a small guard. He's not very like stout. Like, I think they're gonna try and guard Drew Holiday, put Halliburton on Drew Holiday. But I don't want to overuse the Drew Holiday post-ups, because it's not going to be like, you're not going to win a game with 15 Drew Holiday post-ups. But it's like, can you just get 2 big shoulders into Halliburton first, force some help, and then move the ball? Just get him into off-ball actions. Just move your offense, because I do think you're right. Like, it's like, sure, Siakam's the one guy, but it's like, just play your offense, run your actions, pick and pops, and just keep running, keep moving, keep cutting, keep screening. And there's pressure points everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think they should matchup hunt, but I think they should matchup hunt through ball movement, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at all 5 positions, you know, outside of, you know, I don't know, Horford's not taking anybody one-on-one, but like, the thought is like, you can attack that defense from every point on the floor. So if there's a possession where Tatum has Halliburton on it, like you said, don't waste 9 seconds just trying to get him on the block. Run an action, put him in a screen, try to find getting the defense to rotate and react is the key to our path to the title. This team, we know, can kill anybody one-on-one, but that should be like your break of glass in case of emergency option. When this team moves the ball, moves without the ball, and forces teams to defend, especially one that can't play defense, that's where you can exploit your mismatches.
So I watched a good amount of our most recent Pacers game today. I was tweeting out a bunch of clips, mainly of Miles Turner looking helpless in space as the Jays like moonwalked past him easily. Yes. But one of the plays we ran, we did a lot of like inverse post-ups where KP was spread out to the 3-point line and he was throwing the entry pass to one of the Jays. Mm-hmm. And then Miles Turner trying to dig down and help and then recover back to KP. It just exploded their whole defense, and we got a good look every single time. And it's like, you don't even have to set that up. That's like, Jay, go stand on the block and Al Horford will pass it down. And then they're like, are you just going to one-on-one Jaylen Brown with Andrew Nembhard on him? That's probably not going to work. And then Turner's the closest help guy, and he just moves so slowly, painfully slowly. So if he tries to dig down, it's a kick, and then all of a sudden the ball's flying and they're in rotation. So there's just a lot of like simple things you can do. Yeah, and it's all about moving the ball. You're going to get them in rotation. Don't be dumb. Don't try to finish over length. Just drive, multiple drive and kicks, and they will you can gash this defense so easily. Right.
Yeah, I think we're excited to see the frequency in which the orange ball goes through the hoop. Really the key of the game for the Celtics is just at a higher frequency, because we've come up, especially against that, you know, admittedly limited Heat team, we've come up against some somewhat powerful, at least playoff defenses schematically so far. To see, I don't want to jinx us, but like the idea of us like cutting through their defense like paper is very appealing to me, because we've seen I don't want to say a stranglehold, but we've seen some difficult offensive stretches for the Celtics thus far in the playoffs. And this, at least defensively for the opponent, is going to be the least resistance we've seen thus far.
Right.
I guess I want to make sure we circle back on all the ways that the Pacers might attack the Celtics as well. And we talked about transition. The Pacers have ranked first in transition efficiency in the playoffs so far, 7th in frequency. The Celtics, they have the 4th ranked transition defense per cleaning the glass as well, and actually the best transition defense remaining in the playoffs. So that will be an interesting matchup there. What other ways, Greenie, do you expect the Pacers to go at the Celtics? Because I think they're pretty limited there.
Yeah, so the one, as brutal as the Cavs offense may have looked at times, the one thing the Celtics just have not been strong in this whole playoff run is pick and roll defense. They're just bad at it. 20th percentile guarding the roll man, 20th percentile guarding the pick and roll ball handler. Tyrese Halliburton has a history of getting to whatever spot he wants whenever he plays this team. So if the idea is there's only so many, if you're going to try to attack the Celtics defenders one-on-one, that's not going to work out well for you. They're too good at the point of attack. So I could totally see a world where they're running a lot of pick and pop, a lot of pick and roll with Miles Turner until the Celtics can prove that they can stop it, right? Like, we're going to see Al in drop coverage. We're going to see him have to guard in space, and they just haven't been effective with worse offensive talent so far this run. I'm not sure where the Pacers run in pick and roll offense, but I imagine it's probably pretty good just because of how Halliburton can manipulate a defense if you allow him to get into the paint. And you combine that with the fact that the Celtics can't stop pick and roll, or haven't so far. That's what worries me. If their transition defense is going to take that away, I think we see an increase in pick and roll. And that's concerning just because we haven't seen them really lock in and shut that water off.
I wonder if we kind of dare Halliburton to take middies. I know he's good at them, but his release point's kind of low. So I could see our drop, maybe Al's up to the screen, and then once the guard's kind of in that lock and trail position, he just kind of backs off and lets Halliburton take some space in front of him, and just kind of all right, dude, if you're going to shoot 10 of these and make 6, go nuts. But yeah, they're obviously going to be very difficult to stop. You can't really. I don't trust Al switching on to Halliburton, although I didn't trust him switching on to Garland, and now I look like a moron because he was awesome in Game 5. So yeah. But for a whole series, man, I think that's just a lot to ask of a 37-year-old man, speaking from experience. So I wonder if we do what we did with the Cavs, and Tatum is on Mobley, put Tatum on Turner, because Turner, I think, is a better post-up center than Mobley, but he is not let's halt the offense, give it to Turner in the post and let him cook. He's not that type of player. His offensive value is in his spacing. So then we hide Al on maybe Nesmith. That's kind of scary. I mean, say what you want about Nesmith, but he can drive the closeout.
He's an effective driver.
Yeah, and he's got a quick first step. So be an interesting Al Horford series on the defensive end for sure. But Halliburton doesn't scare me in the same way Donovan Mitchell does, where Mitchell's just so incredibly explosive that even if you play him well, he can blow right by you. Hallie doesn't quite have that burst off the dribble. So I wonder if we're just a little less aggressive, which is crazy because we're pretty not aggressive defense in general, and just kind of corral him into that deeper mid-range area and kind of let him take those shots.
It is. You got to be careful though, because he is like Mitchell in the sense that once he gets going, everything Halliburton throws up goes in. True. It's there are very few of those. It could be a low percentage step back. It could be a crazy, floater. I fear if they bait him, he can just have a 16, 17 point quarter by himself.
It is tricky because it's do we play the drop with Al, or it's because it always ends up with we should just switch everything, and that's it's just every series and we've been able to do that because the Lord has graced us with Al Horford for the last 6 years minus a weird stopover in Philly, and he's been one of the best switch bigs in the league, and it didn't look like he was one of the best switch bigs in the league for a second there, and then he absolutely became that guy again in Game 5, and so he's got this time off again. But it's do you want to ask Horford to do it from Game 1? And that's just a lot to ask. Tillman's out for Game for game
least
one.
game
as
one. At least
yeah,
game
so
one.
at least game one, which goes back to the Tatum at the 5 thing. Or is it Brissett? Because, like, you're right, Spoonie. Like, Halliburton is a better player than Garland. And now he seems to have found it. Game 1 against the Knicks series, not so good, but for the most part in this series, he's been pretty excellent. He had the back stuff like halfway through game 4, I think it was, but like he was excellent in games 6 and 7, and he looks like one of the guys who's gotten like the most leash when it comes to injuries that we can't actually tell if he's hurt that I've seen like or ever. It's just like, I think he's still hurt because he's playing bad. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to start doing that with Jason Tatum. But like, do you want to ask Al of that so early on? Because like eventually that's got to wear on him, which is why you go back to the Brissett or Tatum at the 5 to give him a rest, or do you like you pre-switch stuff, you put Horford on there like a guy that they don't really want to bring into an action, so like they're switching. They either have to attack in isolation or they're switching onto Tatum or Jalen or whatever it is.
Now, do you think if there's the Neesmith revenge factor, do you think they just play the Brissett revenge factor?
Yeah.
Try to cosmically cancel that out. Maybe, he hasn't done anything this whole playoff run, but maybe it's all because they needed him for this revenge karma, because I think we all remember that random Pacers game. He made like 7 threes against the Celtics. Haven't made 7 threes since then, but like maybe that's the play.
Yeah, he definitely hasn't done that since then. That's for sure.
No.
You concerned like with the trust levels, Joe's trust levels of O'Shea Brissett? Like that's obviously kept him off the court through large parts of the regular season and certainly through the playoffs so far. Even though that might be, in theory, good for matchups, do you think that gets him on the court? Because I don't know. I don't know if we can trust him to be in the right place at the right time defensively for long stretches or even short stretches.
I think foul trouble is probably your only path for him, I would think.
Yeah, well, if you're listening
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, do we think Luke plays, but not to derail the conversation if you guys want to stay on O'Shea.
He has to.
Yeah. Well, not if he goes to Brissett or Tatum at the 5, because then it's like...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And, TJ McConnell, we haven't talked about him yet. He's like so important for this Pacers team. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you off the top of my head what he was in like scoring for the Pacers, but every night, man, he's so aggressive getting downhill. And the Celtics put Porzingis and Cornet on him previously because he doesn't take perimeter shots. And so you just contest that stuff. But there's a play that he had Porzingis on him, and he like does the Nash dribble, comes around, and then just like turned around instantly, and then came back underneath the basket and finished.
I'm ready for the Pritchard McConnell masterclass that we are subject to. That should be the headline of this entire series, because it's sneaky probably going to come down to how both of those guys played potentially.
Well, both guys were so important. I mean, Pritchard's actually played 23 minutes in the first round versus McConnell's 19, even though it feels like more. And Pritchard had averaged 11 points in that Cavs series, which is huge. I think I would love to staple Pritchard's minutes to McConnell, because it's just like you've got to be locked in with McConnell.
Yep.
Like
he's not going to make a mistake. He's like Pritchard. Yeah. I think I saw them tweet out. He has 40 plus assists with under 10 turnovers. Pritchard's at like 25 assists, 9 turnovers. Like they just don't turn the ball over. And I feel like McConnell is playing with all the confidence in the world, where if you're not ready for that quick little turnaround pull up, that's a weapon for them. So it's the same sort of deal.
Despite the Pacers' sort of prolific offense here, there are some guys we can maybe help off of, like Siakam, 32% from 3, Aaron Neesmith, 30% from 3, TJ McConnell, 26% from 3. Like, despite their hot shooting, particularly in Game 7, where they were just like off the charts hot shooting, through the playoffs so far, like it's not like those guys have been incredibly consistent shooting wise from beyond the arc. And look, if you want to, you mentioned the pick and roll woes for the Celtics. If you want to read more about that and you're listening to the show, check out Greenie's latest blog post, where towards the end of that article, Greenie, you went in on the Celtics pick and roll defense and how that could be problematic going into this series.
It's shockingly bad. Like I was thinking, okay, maybe they would be, middle of the road, just because, not anything they were doing, but just who are they going up against? And when I saw they're giving up well over a point per possession in both roll man and ball handler, and I'm thinking, you can't win a title if you can't, because they're just going to keep running it and running it and running it and running it. The more you face well coached and teams with talent. And if you want to look ahead to the finals matchups, like you don't think Luka is going to operate in the pick and roll. You don't think Mike Conley is going to operate in the pick and roll. So that's just something that they have to clean up because it's probably their most glaring defensive concern.
Get well soon, KP. We're going to come back in a moment and talk about who from the Celtics is going to cook in this series. But first, here's a quick word from Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. March is over, but the biggest moments of college basketball tip off in the month of April. Be a part of the action on Prize Picks for both men's and women's college basketball. And get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can even make the play-in rounds seem interesting since we all know the Celtics won't be there. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Personally, I'm looking at Derek White more on points because they are criminally low, and we all know Derek White is going to come up big in the postseason. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100.
All right, guys, let's have some fun. Greenie, Celtics-wise, who's likely to cook in this series? I mentioned the Jays. That's a somewhat obvious choice, assuming that a lot of defensive attention goes their way, and it will. Is it Derek White? Is it Drew? Who's likely to absolutely cook the Pacers through this series?
I mean, I think it has to be Derek. I mean,
Sure.
It felt like he had gotten out of his valley. I think he's going to be in catch and shoot heaven as the Jays are just able to get into the paint and defenses are going to collapse. I think, having him in transition is going to be, a factor. He's so much more improved on his pull-up threes. So you got to figure if, the Pacers aren't going to want Turner in space, then they'll probably play drop. And that just leads me to believe Derek's going to be able to step into his pull-up three with confidence. I think we have a large sample enough to where we can buy, him being in the high 30s, 40s. Maybe he doesn't shoot 68% from three, but I don't think he'll have to. I just think he's going to be the one, as long as there's no KP, that's going to eat the most from all the Jays gravity. And I think he's just ready to take that leap. He's shown it since October. So I'm going to say Derek.
A lot of choices.
Yes.
I'm tempted to say everybody here from an offensive perspective. Sam Hauser, can we get him back? He hasn't been bad by any means. He shot 40+%.
Yeah. Especially if it goes with your Tatum at the 5, he's probably the guy that slides up, right?
Yeah, I was also going to say Jalen just because he's been so efficient through the playoffs, and Neesmith isn't a guy that's been able to bother him. Siakam's been a guy that he's cooked consistently. Can we get a little PTSD from the bubble sprinkled into this series, because that would be nice from a Siakam perspective?
Well, I was going to say, my fear is that they're just going to assume because they had success in 2020 at the bubble that he's not going to be, have any adjustment, or he's just going to do the same spin move. He might just use that spin move as a crutch, but I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice to just assuming that you're getting the old Pascal Siakam, especially in the system that the Pacers play. So I hope that there's PTSD from him, but I also hope that they don't just, look past it.
Yeah, Jalen owns Siakam. He's got Siakam. I'm not worried about Siakam.
I know we've seen it, but again, I don't want to test the basketball gods. I'm saying
fair enough.
Respect how he's playing, respect how he shoots from the corners, respect how he can shoot from the paint, and just, go with the right mentality.
Well, do we just expect them to put Siakam on Tatum as the primary matchup? That's kind of their only choice, right? It's or Neesmith or a switch, but it's you've got to put your best guy on Tatum, I think, unless you're going to do what the Heat did early in the series where you're sending all this extra help to the defenders. So it's if it's Siakam, similar to when the Heat put Bam on Tatum, and it was just I'm just going to stand in the corner and you guys can play 4-on-4 against Halliburton, Nembhard, Neesmith, and Turner. That's why, I'm
nervous that the Jays they pick on Aaron Nesmith like he's their
Yes.
little brother, like at
Yes.
practice.
Yeah.
Like so, and I think what's funny is like he's played his way into, he's a legit.
He's good.
He's not a negative defensive. Like if you had to list all their defenders, he's the one that you would probably say is neutral at best. But that neutrality does not stop Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. So it's like I think they started just to try to, get him in Tatum's airspace. But once Tatum just uses his size and uses his aggressiveness against him, you almost have to say, okay, Nesmith, like you shut off Derek White, and we'll just try to go with the Jokic theory of let him eat and stop everybody else, because they don't have the size and the quickness outside of him, and their best guy can't even do it.
Yeah, and Nesmith, like I guess the theory is he can get into Tatum's handle a little bit, like sometimes those smaller guys kind of do. But yeah, he's just not big enough in any way, shape, or form. And he is super prone to fouling. And Tatum's gotten a little grifty in the playoffs.
So I mean,
recently.
if anybody knows of his over aggressiveness, it's those two players who had to go up with it every day in practice. And he's going to be amped up to like lock them down. One little pump fake, he'll be in foul trouble before the third quarter.
Yeah, we've been so good at finding the switch for JT as well. So, if Siakam is the primary matchup initially for JT, I have no doubt that we'll find the right switch for Tatum to get him cooking in this one, whether it is Nesmith or someone else. Spoonie, did we get your take on who's going to cook in this series?
Okay, I have an outside-ish of the box. It's not like O'Shea Brissett or something, but I anticipate that since we were just talking about, it's the Svi Mykhailiuk series, back to his Kansas days. No, we were talking about how we're going to attack Turner in space. I wonder if the Pacers' adjustment is like, nope, we're just going to plop him by the rim. He's going to be guarding Al Horford, and we're going to lean into ignoring Al Horford even more than Cleveland did. And Al Horford's just going to be wide open for like 35 possessions a game. And if we saw what Al can do in that 3-point shots going down, like I think he's going to have a ton of wide open threes in this series. And if he's feeling himself, he's feeling the stroke, I could see Al with some like 4 or 5 3, multiple 4 and 5 3 made games. So give me Al as like the dude who's going to cook.
Well, it's interesting because, I poisoned the shit out of all of his food with HGH and it worked.
Good job.
He's going to still have, I can find my way into, the meals on the road, but it's every other day, right? For this whole series, it's every other day. So that makes, he might be great early, but I do fear, you play 3-4 games at the pace that the Pacers play with, what does his 3-point shot look like in a game 4, game 5?
Well, that's what I thought about the last series because he was 3 for 7 in game 2, I think. And then he was 0 for 10 for games 3 and 4. And I was like, he's getting cooked on the one end. They're ignoring him on the other end. And then the big dog goes 6 for 13. So, I was going to say the HGH definitely worked. Yeah. So keep doing that. It should be allowed for any 38-year-olds anyway. So I think it should. Yeah.
Do we get Pritchard cooking it all in this series? Is he reading the headlines and all the major newspapers around the world about the Spider-Man meme, Pritchard McConnell matchup? And I think this is a series that Pritchard can play in. I don't think the Pacers are the sort of team that can really target him repetitively.
There's no hunting Peyton Pritchard. Even if a guy like Nembhard who kind of thrives in the mid range goes at him, I don't know. I feel like I can trust Pritchard defensively more now than maybe ever. And the way he's shooting the ball coming off these last 2 series, I think he's empowered. I think he'll take the McConnell stuff personally. But his issues were mostly when you couldn't have him on the floor for defensive reasons, he doesn't catch his rhythm. Well, if he's not getting played off the floor, then you're going to start to see him and Hauser, catch a rhythm. So I think those are decent options.
Yeah, dude. Pritchard's, the confidence is off the charts for this guy.
Dude.
Like, one big nuts 3 every game, it felt like, in the Cavs series. Like the logo shot, the Dean Wade isolation, like big. And Tatum loves finding Pritchard in transition, and he's quick off the catch. Yeah, Pritchard's going to be able to play in this. It's just fucking hard to beat the Celtics if Pritchard and Hauser are playing and they're getting loose. Like, obviously the Pacers can also score, but when the Celtics are scoring on one end and then they're digging in defensively, it's going to be hard for the Pacers, but they do have that variance piece to balance it out.
I mean, they're like the Celtics light in a sense that when they're rolling, they are devastating. But the style of which they approach offense leaves room for variance. Like it's just as likely they're going to go 7 of 35 as it is 23 of 48. So it's going to be another Missoula ball basketball math series like it was when Donovan Mitchell was active. You can't trade 2s for 3s, against this team, and they can't trade 2s for 3s and beat you. So it's going to be a fascinating series from that aspect.
We're going to finish in a sec talking about the Western Conference, but before we get to that, Greenie, I think this is a good question to ask you and Jake and Spoonie. What worries you most about this series? We've kind of touched on a few of those concepts already, like what do we do without Horford? How do we manage his minute load? Is he going to hold up defensively? Is he going to be able to switch all series? Or is there something else that comes to mind aside from injury as far as like worst case scenario with this series?
I think, you always have to be weary of team of destiny type confidence, right? Like coming off a huge Game 7 road win, the Pacers are heading into this series with the belief that they're on your level. And I think, the Celtics have a bad habit of not playing down to competition, but letting teams hang around, right? We just saw it in Game 5 against Cleveland. Marcus Morris coming out of nowhere, making 10 million threes. Like that can be Aaron Nesmith. That can be Obi Toppin. So just the fact that they have multiple ways that they can kill you while also being pretty deep. This isn't a team that only plays, 5, 6, 7 guys. So my fear is it's always going to be turnovers, cold shooting, and not the right mentality. If the Celtics avoid those 3 things, they're incredibly tough to beat 4 out of 7 times. You don't usually get a full series of them avoiding all of those things. We're going to have the random poor shooting night, variance, Pacers, 50% 3-point shooting game. We're going to have the 16, 17 points off turnover game that you're going to have to overcome. So it's just, can they do that now having to face a team that can actually score and make you pay for your mistakes as opposed to, you weren't afraid of, Max Strus or, George Niang or Tyler Hero. Like this is just a completely different level of offense where you're going to have to be, at the top of your game and execute at a high level.
I've got one incredibly obvious one. I'm really scared of losing one of the first 2 home games. Can we please just fucking go up 2-0?
Accept it
please.
As part of the sacrificial lamb to the way to a title is we have to live through dropping into hearing that we're frauds, hearing that Tatum isn't a dog. That's just our sacrifice to win series in 5.
It sucks so much. I would be so happy if they would go up 2-0 because winning in 5 is winning in 5, but winning in 5 when you tie 1-1 apparently is like going to 7. That's what it feels like and how the narratives shake out. So that's my fan brain one. The other one is just is Halliburton back to being in-season tournament Halliburton? Siakam looked really good in the late parts of that series. And it's bam, is Siakam at his... he's made an All-NBA team over Jason Tatum, which is ridiculous, but he has gotten to that level at times. He's able to play at that level while Halliburton plays at the level that he was prior to the injury? Because if that is the case, then they've got 2 top 15, 20 guys. Maybe even higher if the way that Halliburton was playing before the injury. So that's my fear is that if those guys are playing at that level, then we got a series, and I would prefer to not have a series.
Yeah, very much so.
I think at some point you're going to have a series. I think it's
of course.
Yeah,
it's too illogical, especially
next year.
Yeah, it's let us win this one, and then we can have another. That's true.
We've earned that, I think. Wait, what do you think, Spoonie?
Real quick, I think the thing for me is don't get sucked into the Pacers style. Don't let them run and gun and then all of a sudden you're trying to force it or trying to go too fast and turning the ball over. This is the one team in the NBA I'm okay with the Celtics playing slow against. I just think if you're deliberate on the offensive end, you can get any shots you want against them. And they want you to play fast. They want you to take that first three that you see. They want to force turnovers because that's the way they win this game. So just don't let the Pacers dictate the style of the game. Like, if you got to turn it into a dogfight, you're probably going to win a dogfight. So slow it down a little bit and just pick this defense apart.
Yeah, okay. You guys have sort of covered all the things that I am personally worried about as well. So let me respond.
I know you have more on that list, though. I know you have more.
It's a private list. I like to keep to myself. It's a little too neurotic for the average audience here. But how about I'll respond with something on the other side of the coin. So, Greenie, what do you think of this? After what happened in the conference finals last year, the Celtics going down 0-3, scraping back, and ultimately losing in terribly embarrassing fashion, is that in itself enough of a motivator for the Celtics to take this series insanely seriously and like rattle off 3 straight before maybe gentlemen sweeping in the end?
I want to believe so, but also, we heard all year them talking about how important it was to win at home in the playoffs, how serious they were taking it. And, they had those 2 letdown performances. And yes, there was, some variance at play, some, not sustainable 3-point shooting. But if any team can do that, it's going to be this Indiana Pacers team. So I am traumatized by what happened in this series this time last year. I would hope that, they are also as traumatized and can learn from their mistake. But I've been watching this team my entire life, and not once have they ever learned from a single mistake. So I can't just assume that they're just going to, flip that switch. I think they're going to have to win despite having a game where they make their same mistakes.
All right, we can return that to the list of worries then, I think. We're going to take a break and hear from Game Time, and when we come back, we'll finish up talking about the Western Conference.
The NBA playoffs have been awesome so far, so it's hard to not think about trying to get to a couple of games. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer to tip-off, which makes it great for last-minute decisions to maybe fly to Boston for the NBA Finals. My dad is literally on the way to Boston from Sydney right now for Game 1 of the second round, and he used Game Time to get his tickets. Game Time has awesome features like seat views. You get a sweet panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You get a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, Greenie, Jake, Spoonie, taking into account the basketball gods, the potential to create a disturbance cosmically there. I want to talk about the Western Conference a little bit. And Greenie, I just want to get your takes on the Nugs going down to the Wolves in Game 7 last night. Is it a sense of like a washing over sense of relief of the Nuggets no longer being a factor, or is it a newly developing fear of potentially facing the Wolves defense?
It's kind of both, right? Because I feel like while Jokic is an unstoppable force, I think matchup-wise, the Celtics match up better with Denver than they do Minnesota, because there's a formula to limiting the Celtics, and that's length, that's perimeter defense, and that's size, all of which Minnesota has. I think you have Jaden McDaniels, Neil Alexander Walker. You have even. And you have the center rotation. I just think the way that they can lock in defensively to your best players at your best positions is better than what I think the Nuggets would have been able to do. You would have had a much harder problem stopping that Nuggets offense, as you will, in theory, the Wolves offense. But I just think there's something to the 40-20 rule. I am hell-bent on this. The Wolves and the Celtics are the only 2 teams left that hit the 40-20 rule. So it does not surprise me that they knocked off the Nuggets, and it would not surprise me if they're who they have to beat in order to win the title.
Man, I'm going against my own philosophy here, which is maybe a bad sign because I like the Celtics to go against softer defenses, but I just don't think we had a solve for Jokic in the way that the Nuggets did. Like, even if Porzingis is healthy, the way that the Timberwolves had that size and that defense. Like, they were able to guard the Nuggets in a way that the Celtics couldn't. It was also one of those things where I'm watching the Nuggets choke it away. I'm like, actually, maybe I was wrong all along and I should have been going for the Nuggets. But, like, on the other end, the Nuggets defense struggled through kind of 2 rounds, and the Celtics defense is the best defense left in the playoffs, second best defense all year long. I think that the way that the Celtics can guard the Timberwolves is something that could really, like, everything that you just said is true about the Celtics is true about the Timberwolves, but worse in theory. Ant just, we'll see what happens with Ant, because 6 for 24 in Game 7, but great performance according to the glorious Bill Simmons. Was insane. I was losing my fucking mind. Because like a lot of what Ant's success was in the first 2 rounds was like insane just jump shooting. Insane pull-up shooting, insane shooting from the mid-range, like complete outliers relative to what he's done in his career so far. And it's like, is that going to come back down to earth? It kind of has so far. And if that's the case, and he's just like actually who Ant is, then I think that we are like really capable to shut them down. Conley's really important for them. Another 7-game series, potentially 6-7. I think people are underrating Dallas. He's someone as a small guard who's like clearly so important for them. I think that like, and they've got places we can attack, like Towns, not a place that the Nuggets were really able to attack because their offense was predicated off Jokic, whereas like we've got all these ball handlers that can attack Towns and Conley. And Gobert. But again, I think it's close. Obviously, I've already ordered my Dallas Mavericks Kyrie Irving jersey. It's in the mail. That's on the way. But yeah, I did lean Wolves, but it was like close.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you don't have to play the best player in the world, it's a better situation. It's just that the Wolves are armed to beat what you do best, and that is the area of concern. I would have had a much better time sleeping at night knowing that Michael Porter Jr. had to guard Jason Tatum than Jaden McDaniels. It's just 2 completely different ends of the spectrum. But on the other end, like, it wouldn't surprise me if the Wolves have a 6-minute stretch where they can't score, whereas I know Jokic is getting a great shot every time he touches the ball. So it's a trade-off.
There's an inevitability to Jokic's offense that I find very difficult to watch as a Celtics fan. It's just like, he did it again. Like, how did he flip that in? And obviously, it finally came to an end against the Wolves. But, I'm with you, Jake. I think that we can. Those are going to be like 82, 80
it's going to be so
games
gross.
against the Wolves. It's going to be disgusting basketball. But I do think we just have more offensive firepower and a fairly even defense. And if KP is healthy, he will be massive against the Wolves. That loss we had against them, he did not play.
Right.
And he can stretch out Gobert and kind of undermines their entire defensive philosophy where it's like just protect the rim at all costs. They kind of dared the Nuggets to make threes against them, and they just couldn't. You can't really play against the Celtics like that.
If we're lucky enough to make it that far.
Of course.
We're consulting the shamans. We're not involved with any jinxes here. Everything's fine. Anything else on this Pacers Celtics matchup? Anything we've discussed so far before we wrap up, guys? I do have one other question for you, Greenie, but anything else you haven't fired up?
Who do you think has the coaching advantage?
I think we do.
Go on, Spinny.
So I just think Carlisle is a solid coach, but I think he got kind of overrated by that Dirk title. He's really stubborn in a lot of the things he does. I think it might be a mistake to go too deep into your bench in the conference finals. And Carlisle they have 3 dudes averaging 20 minutes a night off the bench. So I think Joe has done really, really well over these past 2 series. Yeah, he's done every time there was an adjustment, he had something to come back with, and it worked every single time. It's not a coincidence we won 3 straight and 2 straight series. So I think Carlisle's a good coach. I think Joe is like really proving the haters wrong so far in the playoffs.
It's fair.
My only concern is that how he just refused to try a non-Horford thing in those couple of games. Fair. But he was right.
It's like 5 minutes, and you were right.
Who am I? I don't fucking know, dude. So like, and it feels bad at times. And to not overreact to certain things, like Donovan Mitchell going 6 for 8 from 3 in that first half of Game 3. It's like, we're not going to change anything. and then you end up kind of blowing them out late. So like, I think you're right. Carlisle, I think, is overrated. He went away from Nemhard so late, like 2 games late in that Knicks series. He just put it should have ended in game 1. Like, it should have been the second half of that game. It should have been Neesmith or Siakam on Brunson. The fact that they didn't try anything else. So, yeah, I think I don't think either coach is like an outlier impact guy. I think there's one guy in the league that is, and that's Spoelstra. And other than that, I think
I thought Joe put him in his back pocket. If we're being honest.
Oh,
I don't know if we want to go back.
Well,
but
that's fair. But like, what was Spoelstra supposed to do?
oh no, that's not his fault. But at the same time,
Sure.
all I had to hear about was how much Spo outcoached, Missoula in 2023.
Yeah.
So listen.
Well, that's why I don't think coaching matters. It's like shooting variance gods saved the fucking Heat in the conference finals. And the difference in this series is that the Pacers can't guard the Celtics, whereas the Heat were shooting 50% from 3 and also an elite defense at the same time. So that doesn't happen. That's an aside though. Penco.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, my mind just sort of naturally wanted to Rick Carlisle. He's the older coach, with more tenure. He's got the championship experience. But you guys have made a really good argument for Joe Mazzulla. What do you think, Greenie?
I just think it's probably not going to come down to coaching, right? It's going to come down to the execution on the floor. I just feel way more confident in Joe's ability to adjust now that we've seen it. I think that was, the first year it was wishful thinking. This year, I feel like he's proactive with his timeouts. I feel like he's willing to be flexible in his approach. I think his rotations have been solid. I think he's put it together. And I think while Carlisle has the experience, he's like he's an old like me. He's an old like Spoony. We're stuck in our ways. We don't want to change. It's like we do what we do and you're just, to hell or high water with it. So I think he's the more stubborn of the two, and Joe is incredibly stubborn, which is saying something.
Thank you for calling out Spoonie specifically with the oldest take. We'll clip that.
No bias for me with Joe.
Look, we'll end on this just quickly because we are running out of time, Greenie. The bizarre media takes in the mainstream media. We've seen the tweets coming from you over the last few weeks. I just want to get your take on all of this. Like, how do you reconcile how the media is treating the Celtics after this Ant performance, 6 of 24, I think he was from the field, but that's a stellar performance if you ask anyone from the mainstream media. Meanwhile, Jason Tatum, the Celtics, they can do no right, it seems, despite handling both playoff series so far. Yeah. Where does this come from? Is it engagement farming from the mainstream media, or is it something else?
I think it's, everyone knows if you want to move the needle, you throw shade at the Celtics. And I think it's just very interesting because everything that Ant is currently doing, we saw Jason Tatum do at age 22, and he's repeated it the last 4 years since. So it's like, this is not the first time a 22-year-old has ever had a legitimate postseason run, taking out defending champs, been that guy. I think, what sucks about it is it takes away from how great Anthony Edwards is playing because 6 of 24, he's MJ. Tatum, 11 of 25, he's Tobias Harris. Like, it just does not make logical sense. And I also think because Tatum has been doing it for so long, you just sort of forget about it, right? Ant is the new guy on the block. They just had this incredible 7-game but 7-game series over the Nuggets. He's deserving of praise. I just think what's tough is, as a Celtics fan, I'm just saying, like, okay, where's the consistency? If Tatum is relying on his super team when he only scores 16 points and they win, why isn't Anthony Edwards relying on his super team that has the 6th man of the year, an all-star, all-NBA player in Cat, a 4-time defensive player of the year in Gobert?
Yeah.
Like, the others last night were why they won, but Ant gets to be MJ. And, like I said, Tatum drops 51 in the game 7, goes on the road and beats Giannis in game 6, and he's Tobias Harris.
He's a choker.
It's engagement. It's fans of fan bases that have been personally hurt by Jason Tatum. Everybody knows if you want engagement on Tatum or engagement on Twitter, you just throw some Tatum slander out there and you'll get your dopamine hits. But to see it from national media and guys that you would think can, not have to result to that is disappointing. But like we said earlier, like how Bill Simmons went on that entire rant. When have you ever heard him praise Tatum
It's
like that
crazy.
in games where he goes 6 of 24? It's never
Crazy. It's wild because I've been saying like Ant reminds me of Tatum a lot. Like they aren't these like super consistent scorers. They have these inefficient nights, but what makes them great is that they can impact the game without being super efficient. Like if Luka goes 6 for 24, they lose these games because he doesn't defend at an elite level. He doesn't rebound at an elite level. He can't play 45 minutes and maintain that level. They're actually really fucking similar in that way. And for whatever reason, one's treated the other way. He's absolutely a victim of his success. If he had lost to Philly his rookie year and he had he had lost to the Raptors in the bubble, and then his first finals run was that first finals run, it would be a completely different conversation. It just would be.
I disagree. I think part of it is it's anti-Celtics bias. I mean,
that's probably part of it.
Say what it is. That's at the root of it. A lot of people hate this team, and that's fine. You know, it's like, who knew winning would be boring? And if that's the case, then I hope they are, you know, a human rain delay of a team so they can just become a Spurs dynasty. You know, like who gives a shit that the Spurs were boring? I just think a title ends all of it. And we've known that since October. We've known that since the second they lost the finals. The second that he's hoisting the trophy, none of it matters. Like, you can't call me Tobias Harris if I'm 26 with a finals MVP, 3 straight first team all in. Like, this is it. This is a true legacy defining for all of these guys in the Final Four. For Luka, for Ant, for Tatum, for Halliburton. Like, this is it. This is someone's legacy is going to be drastically altered in a month. It's terrifying.
Please, Lord.
It's terrifying.
8 more.
I was going to say.
8 more.
Please, God.
Like, if you think I'm insufferable now, just wait until Tatum.
Oh, buddy,
Oh my
we're
God.
gonna dance on graves. I got some bookmarks.
The second that happens.
Please let that happen. All right. Well, look, Greenie, you defend the Celtics honor every day on Twitter. Your blog for Barstool is unparalleled. This was fun, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, guys. Best of luck. Let's all pray. Let us pray.
Let's make it happen with our prayers. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for watching or listening. We'll be back here live on YouTube immediately after Game 1. Spoonie, Jake, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtic.
I love the